Okay, it's time to celebrate our differences and talk about variation. So, variation is the reason that we are all unique. As I say, time to celebrate our differences. And so what we're talking about here is phenotypes. So the appearance of an organism, and that's really down to two things. It's down to genes, it's down to genetic factors, and also to environment. Ooh, can't squeeze it in. Maybe I can. That's smaller. So we've got two things going on that influence the way we appear. So for example, I'm currently looking very pale and interesting, but give me 2 weeks in Egypt and I'll be beautifully brown. And so that would affect, that environment of sun would affect my phenotype. I'm slightly overweight because I do a lot of sitting around and eating chocolate. So they're all environmental influences. And of course this kind of genetic environment thing is now being a little bit blurred by epigenetics, and so I'm thinking that as we find out more and more about epigenetic factors and how they affect phenotype, that some of them might be down to environmental impact on your lifestyle, and some of them might be being inherited. So I think there's more to discover about this in the future. However, as far as you are concerned, we've got genetic factors and the environment, and you should be able to at least give one example of that. And I would think that body mass is probably the way to go. With body mass depends on the genes that you inherit, plus your sort of lifestyle, how much you eat and how much you exercise. So these phenotypes that vary, we can place into two distinct categories. So the first one is discontinuous. So discontinuously varying phenotypes are things that are in categories with no intermediates. Now basically, given the work that we've just done on genetics, these are all the things that are inherited in a sort of a Mendelian, so you need to think Mendelian genetics. That means you're sort of all or nothing. So if we graph it, you could kind of do a graph. It would be a bar chart. These people with blood group O, people with blood group B, people with blood group A, people with blood group AB. And up the side, of course, we have number of individuals. So what we're saying about these, when I'm saying they're inherited in a Mendelian fashion, is that they are usually controlled by single gene, maybe two alleles, maybe multiple alleles. But there are things where there are no intermediates. You can't be kind of blood group O and kind of blood group AB. You're one or the other. The other sort of characteristic we've got are ones that show continuous variation. Now these are ones that Mendel would have struggled with, to be honest, because these have many intermediates. And if you just imagine the college population, you could line people up in order of height, in order of mass, in order of skin or hair colour, and you'd have all different shades, you'd have all different heights, you'd have all different masses, from very, very light to very, very heavy, hand size, foot size. So these are things that would produce a particular sort of distribution called the normal distribution. And I'm going to do another video on the normal distribution. I think it deserves that, where you put the number of individuals up the side and your characteristic along the bottom, whatever it is, and however you're measuring it. And you get very few people at one end of the range and very few people at the other, and most are in the middle. I don't know if that's why it's called normal, but anyway, doesn't really matter, that's probably a maths thing. And these things are down to many genes, so we call that polygenic inheritance. So it means that there's the influence of lots of genes, and I'm pretty sure that I've read somewhere that musical ability would lie on this scale, and there are something like 7 different genes on 7 different chromosomes that influence that characteristic. And again, all those polygenes may have different alleles. All of those genes, different alleles, might be multiple alleles. So you get loads and loads of intermediates. So, remember I said about the environment. These things, the environmental influence because there are many genes, the environment exerts an influence on the phenotype, whereas in this case environment has little influence. And just as a reminder of what we mean by genetic factors, so these are things like random assortment that makes us all look different, crossing over, mutation, random gametic fusion, and that's what a Punnett square shows us really, doesn't it? It shows us random gametic fusion, but just for 1 or 2 characteristics. And I'm going to put in there tentatively epigenetic factors. Bearing in mind that they might also be environmental. So, key things to learn: discontinuous, and to recognise it from a graph; continuous, to recognise it from a graph, particularly to recognise that normal distribution.